What's up, Raptors fans? Welcome to the Raptors Roundtable. I have two guys I'm sure you're familiar with here, JJ Buckets, Clutch Takes. If you have not checked them out, they make some really nice Raptors content. Go check them out. So, with that being said, let's get right into it, JJ.
All right, guys. So if you don't know how this works, I'm going to explain it to you real quick. So we're going to be trying to stick to a bi-weekly schedule for these for the most part. And we're going to be rotating where we post these videos between our three channels. So give us all a subscribe if you can, if you want to keep up with the pod. I guarantee you it'll be entertaining. So I think it'll be worth it. But without further ado, let me introduce today's topics for you. So we are going to talk about the Raptors and the play-in tournament and everything revolving around that. We're also going to touch upon a recent report about Kyle Lowry potentially, being a target for the 76ers in a sign and trade. It's recent news. So we might be the first to break it, might not, but who knows? And then lastly, we have a bit of a personal vendetta to settle here between two of us here, where we are going to debate Allen Iverson versus Dwayne Wade and who should be higher in all-time shooting guard rankings. But we are going to start off with the Raptors in the play-in. Now, obviously, we all know this has been a crazy season for the Raptors for so many reasons, just injuries, COVID, no good centers, being on this team for a really long time. So we're in this weird position right now where we're still in position to make the play-in tournament, and some Raptors fans think that we should absolutely push for it. Some Raptors fans want to commit to the tank. I'm going to kick it off to my co-participants here to get some thoughts.
Yeah, me and JJ have talked a lot about this. Do we even want to make this play-in tournament? Obviously, our team is good enough to make the play-in tournament and make a run in the playoffs. Ever since Aaron Baines went to the bench and we brought in Kem Birch, our rebounding has been better. We're playing better as a team. This is exactly what we needed. It's almost like, where has this man been our whole life? But yeah, the conflicting thing is we're closer to the bottom than we are to the playoffs. We've always been in that middle section. And do we want to get it with this high draft class and the possibility to land in the top four with all this talent?
So I'm gonna go on a different take, and I'm gonna disagree with you here, Dan, because I feel like the Raptors should go for the playoffs. Now it's been a bizarre season of where the Raptors the entire season where they were fighting to make the playoffs and then they started losing. And you know what? Even I got on that tank bandwagon. I was like, all right, the Raptors are gonna get a high pick, and then they go on that 4-game winning streak. And we're ready for the Raptors to make a playoff push, but they keep losing here. Obviously, they do have a tough schedule coming up, so that's debatable as well. But I think the Raptors should go for the playoffs. Now, I know a lot of people will disagree with me on this here, but the Raptors have always found hidden gems in late in the draft. So I don't see why they can't do that in this draft. Now, I know it's a very stacked draft. Everyone wants the Raptors to get a top 10 pick, but I think the playoff experience will definitely do a lot of Raptors players some good. And in the long term, that pays off. That's a winning cultures. That's Raptors mentality. And I feel like the Raptors should go for the playoffs instead of trying to tank. What do you think, JJ?
You said a lot of people are going to disagree with you, and I'm absolutely one of them. I don't think I don't think you create a losing culture with one season of not making the playoffs. The Raptors, previous to this, it's been what, 8 straight playoff appearances. So I don't think that's a problem. And obviously, we've already talked about, well, not here specifically, but obviously, I think each of us individually have talked about the fact that this core already does have that experience for the most part. If you're making the playoffs via the play-in tournament, that experience is going to who? Like Malachi Flynn, I guess Chris Boucher because he's in a bigger role, and Gary Trent Jr. because he's in a bigger role. And in that sense, you can do that exact same thing next year. The difference will be next year, you're going to be potentially rolling in with somebody from this draft class that's a top 4 pick, or even if it's not, somebody that's still a very high caliber talent. And I understand that the Raptors are great at finding gems later in the draft. And to that, my counterpoint is imagine what Masai and Bobby Webster can do with a high draft pick.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like this is more of a retool than a rebuild. Like, don't worry, Raptors fans. Like, this is just one losing season. We're not going down the road of such a team like the Sacramento Kings. This team has already played a lot better since we've gotten our additions. Frank Gillespie just signed. Kem Birch can be a possible person to resign. The young talent is improving all the time. Bring in free agent if possible through this draft, through the trade. There's so many options that we can go through. This will be a quick turnaround, and I believe getting that top pick will make us so much more competitive next year. And stay tuned, Raptors fans.
Dan, I'm gonna disagree with you guys here again. So you guys have said the Raptors have never had a chance to draft a high draft pick, but we did when we drafted Jakob Poeltl. He is, I believe, eighth or ninth. I can't recall. That was several years ago. Seventh, eighth, or ninth pick.
10th overall.
Or sorry, 10th overall. There you go. It was that New York Knicks pick we got on the Andrea Bargnani trade, for those of you guys who remember. But I think the thing with the Raptors drafting is not only do they find hidden talent, they look at players that team passed over. Now, Malachi Flynn, I mentioned this in my previous video. The reason a lot of teams passed over him was because of his size. Although he's not undersized for a point guard, he's really skinny and short. He's also much older. He's a senior. So that's one of the things a lot of teams look into. They look to draft younger guys, but the Raptors usually go for those guys that no one's looking at. So I feel like that's going to be really difficult to do in the top 10 because those players are so coveted and everyone knows about those players. So,
But at the same time, I feel like the Raptors can identify an elite talent that is going to immediately be a contributor into what they want to do and into their system. And I think you can't put a price on, having high end talent. I understand the Raptors are great at developing players, which honestly even helps in this regard that they'll get a chance to develop an elite prospect. I think this is genuinely one of the most loaded classes, especially at the top, in a while. I think you can make an argument that guys 1 through 5 are more exciting than a lot of number one picks in previous years outside of, say, Zion. So in that sense, yeah, do I hear you on the case that the Raptors will find, if they're later in the draft, will find somebody that's been overlooked and turn them into a good player? Sure. But why not take somebody that can be a potential franchise altering talent and give them the chance to be that franchise altering talent, considering you have one of the most well run organizations in the league?
Yeah, I would say that we found so many late gems, like Pascal Siakam obviously comes to mind as our best one. The Raptors have a great development staff, if not like the best in the league. So I definitely agree that we can find a late gem again. But like JJ said, this top of the draft is so stacked that it can fix some of our bigger needs, like a shot creator, someone who's a number one option. If you draft Evan Mobley, you get your center of the future. If you draft Jalen Green, you get your scorer of the future potentially. If you draft Cade Cunningham, you get your number one option for your team.
so I'm gonna disagree with you guys here, and this is not to throw any of the top players in this draft under the bus. We know Cade Cunningham is great, Evan Mobley is great, Jalen Green, Jalen Suggs, they're both amazing players. But besides the Zion draft class, which draft class was the previous one that was really hyped up? Andrew Wiggins, Jabari Parker. We heard all of these names. Those two guys were being compared to LeBron and Melo, and it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to turn out to be that player. Now, again, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying Cade isn't going to become an all-star. We're going to become a great player in the NBA or other players, but it's never a guarantee in the NBA. Injuries can happen. You don't know how they're going to play at the NBA level. We've seen it often with some of the more stacked draft. It doesn't always happen, and it's not always predictable as a lot of NBA scouts even think. I saw a report online recently about Steph Curry about saying he might not be a great player at the NBA level, and we know Steph Curry. So I want to hear your thoughts on this. I know you're gonna disagree, but I genuinely do believe the Raptors can still find a decent player, even if they're outside of the top 10 pick. They can find a decent player in the 10 to 20 range, depending on where they finish. So
My counter argument to what you're saying about the Wiggins and the Jabari is, okay, Wiggins ended up in Minnesota. It's Minnesota. And I mean, yeah, Milwaukee's a little bit of a different case. For Jabari, it really was the injuries that kind of derailed him a lot, I think. Again, I just think if you're giving a franchise like Toronto the opportunity to develop an elite prospect, that's going to be a difference. I don't think it's so much so a situation here where it's like, yeah, you're taking a huge chance. No, you're looking at prospects near this top of this draft class that are incredibly talented, incredibly touted, and they just need the right situation. And Lord knows Toronto's the right situation for any of these guys.
Yeah, like the system means a lot because, like you said, if a player goes into a losing culture, they might lose motivation. They might not develop right, but the Raptors obviously do have a winning culture. As when we're still resting players, like we're resting Kyle Lowry, Siakam, Van Vliet, we're still finding ways to win games when we shouldn't. And I believe like that's a winning culture. And I feel like a prospect coming into this team would develop nicely.
I can sit here and disagree with you guys all day long. Obviously, I've made my points, but I think it's time to move on to our next topic. JJ, what do you have for us?
Absolutely. So next up, as I previously mentioned earlier in the video, it seems like the 76ers still have their eyes on Kyle Lowry, except this time it's going to be in the offseason. So reports say that the Sixers are going to pursue Kyle Lowry in a sign and trade option. Now, to throw this into here, what do the Sixers even have for a potential sign and trade that would get you excited at this point?
Um, I mean, like, I don't know if the value decreases now that it's a sign and trade. I know you get an extra year from that sign and trade, and obviously the 76ers don't really have much cap space. Um, Obviously the one for one that makes the cap work kind of automatically off the top of my head is Tobias Harris. But at the same time, do we want to take on that contract with Tobias Harris? Um, I know other ways, maybe it could be. I know Danny Green's contract is off the book, so you can't include that, but possibly a Seth Curry or I come
Just some other guys, just some other salary fillers we can throw in there. So
yeah, I don't even know if that's like enough to make the cap work necessarily. I know Kyle Lowry has said that he still wants to have like a $30 million payday. So that's going to make it tough also.
yeah, it becomes really tricky. Now, obviously, I've spoken so much about the 76ers. They do have some really intriguing prospects. Obviously, they have Tyrese Maxey, they have Matisse Thybulle, but they also have some other guys as well. I don't know if you guys did a lot of research in the previous draft, but Isaiah Joe was one of the best shooters before injury in college. They have him, and they also have Paul Reed, who was named the NBA, or sorry, excuse me, the G League MVP. So they do have some other guys, but as Dan mentioned, it becomes a little bit tricky because salary, like who are they going to give up? I was thinking Tobias Harris too, but as Raptors fans, I don't want them. Raptors fans are already complaining about Pascal making too much. I can't imagine what they're going to do to Tobias Harris if we got him. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, regarding Tobias, like I think you're doing Philly a huge favor if you're taking him from there. And I mean, obviously, this is no disrespect to Tobias. He's a good player. I'm not going to pretend like he's not, but at that money and at that contract, no, thank you. Please stay as far away from this team as possible. And if they, and I think part of it too is you don't necessarily want to give up Tobias if you're the Sixers. Like ideally, you'd want to add Kyle Lowry to Simmons, Tobias, and Embiid to really put that team over the top. So I'm sure they want to get this done, and I'm sure there's a way to get it done. But I also just feel like it's not a long conversation. This would be, I don't see the incentive here for the Raptors to really, do the Sixers a favor unless, it's out of respect for Kyle Lowry.
Yeah, I just remembered the last player would be like George Hill, the player they just acquired from the trade deadline. I know he makes like 10 mil, but I still don't really know if that's enough. Maybe even need like a third team in this. I don't even know if that's allowed for sign and trades. Look at a prospect like Tyrese Maxey, someone that we've been looking at. It'd be an interesting road to go down to. I wonder if the trade deadline, obviously nothing materialized there. I wonder if they had talks that will continue this in the offseason to get it done. That could be a possibility. And who knows, maybe Masai has something up his sleeve.
Absolutely. And you know what? I agree. I mean, a lot of fans were angry that Kyle Lowry didn't get traded, but I've mentioned this so many times to everyone. Look at what Rockets got from, the Miami Heat. The Raptors fans would have been absolutely livid. Did get something similar, like the Rockets did for Oladipo. I think it's better to hold on. And it's also good to remember that only about 5 or 6 teams will have a lot of cap space to pay Kyle Lowry $20+ million. So the Raptors can hold other teams a little hostage because you know what? If 76ers don't want to give up too much, you can sign and trade him to Miami Heat. We can sign and trade him to other teams as well. So it's not necessarily like we have to sign and trade him. And Masai Ujiri, as we know, he's a stubborn man. He might just resign Lowry and say, if you guys aren't offering me a good piece, I am not trading you. I'm not trading Kyle Lowry to you. So But before we end this discussion, I do want to ask you guys a quick question here. What would you want back in a Kyle Lowry trade from the 76ers?
At the
Speaking prospects only and not salary matchup.
at the very least, I guess since it's a sign and trade scenario, at the very least, one of Maxi or Thibault. And if I'm being completely straight up, I'd rather have Maxi than Thibault. I think I just don't enjoy the idea of working on developing Matthias Thibault's offensive game because as great as he is defensively, his offense is going to need a lot of work. And honestly, I just even then, I don't think he has the same ceiling that a Maxi potentially does. So I'd say Maxi, maybe some draft pick conversation. That would be, I guess, the ideal situation. But if you can tell, I'm not excited about this one.
Yeah, I feel like Maxi definitely has to be in the deal. Obviously, the salary fillers. Tobias Harris, I would definitely stay away from. That would not be good for the Raptors to stay into that contract. Um, Maybe you get multiple first round picks that are like possibly unprotected. That sweetens the deal. But uh, also like Maxi and Thibault, especially Maxi, he hasn't really played too much because the 76ers team is really good. So he's still kind of a mystery.
Yeah, he is. I agree. Maxi would be the ideal option. I know a lot of people are high on Matisse Thybulle, but as JJ has mentioned, I don't want to take another few years to develop some guy into, his offense. We obviously struggle from the bench in offensively scoring. Our bench needs some scoring. I think Tyrese would be a really nice piece off the bench. And I forget his age. He's only 20, 21 years old. So he's a really young player as well. So we'll have him for some time. I think that would be the ideal trade for the Raptors if we were to trade Kyle Lowry to the 76ers.
Mm-hmm. Now, to wrap this one up, we have a personal showdown here. And by showdown, I really don't mean it's not serious. So we had an interesting discussion about a week ago where me and the Warwich Report got into talking all-time shooting guards list. And we found that we disagree upon the placement here of a couple of guys. So for my money's worth, my guy, Dwayne Wade, I think slots in higher on the all-time shooting guard list. But I know that sentiment's not shared.
I disagree because if you're to compare prime D Wade, and don't get me wrong, I watched him in his prime days. He was a hell of a player, like all around player. Defense, you remember that enormous dunk over Verjao when he was. I remember that dunk too. That was amazing. But Allen Iverson has changed the game completely. He has done so many things as a 6-foot point guard. I can't even remember how much he weighs, 180 pounds, 185 pounds. But the things he was doing for the 76ers, and even when he got traded to Denver, obviously his career didn't continue as well it was with Denver as it was with 76ers, but he was still putting up, I was looking up his stats and I didn't realize this, but he was putting up some enormous stats still as a 28, 29, 30-year-old. He had that one season, I think, where he was averaging 30, 31 points or something like that. And I don't remember D Wade averaging that much at age 31. So,
all right, here's my thing. And I've obviously talked to you about this, but as an individual player, his numbers are great. They're fantastic. My things here, there's a couple of places that I want to tackle this at. First of all, defense, right? I mean, hey, Allen Iverson has super flashy offensive numbers. I'm not going to argue with you there, but defensively, comparing Dwayne Wade to Allen Iverson, no question. Absolutely no contest. Dwayne Wade is a tremendously better defender than AI. Not even close. One of the best shot blocking guards in NBA history, on top of just being a good individual defender. Dwayne Wade was that guy. But here's my thing. Sure, do Wade's numbers maybe look a little bit worse than AI's? Yes. And I'm not going to default to quote unquote, oh, 3 rings is better than 0. But first of all, it is. I'm going to use that as a platform to give you the full discussion of the full picture I want to paint here. I think Allen Iverson, and I don't want to throw one of my guys under the bus here, but he had a little bit of that like Russell Westbrook problem where you had to like really tailor your team to him. And then even still, it wouldn't necessarily be good enough to be a winner at the end of the day. Dwayne Wade is just one of those guys that I think he works in every single situation. He can be a phenomenal player no matter what situation he's tasked with. I think Dwayne Wade is just, he's so good. And I mean, if we're talking about prime Dwayne Wade, my God, one of the best slashers in NBA history, period. He was so explosive. And then obviously once he lost that explosiveness, he opened up his mid-range game a lot more and even eventually extended out to the three-point line. I do think the winning matters. And I think in a situation like this is how I like to look at it, where if you're looking at two NBA greats, which both these guys are, and they're really close, which you can make the case that they are here, you're not going to ignore the winning. However, if it's like two NBA greats that you're looking at, and one is obviously clearly better than the other, but the other one just happens to have more rings, that's when I don't necessarily bring, the winning aspect of it into it. But when it's two guys that are close, you can't ignore that one was just a better team player, even if, another guy's individual numbers look a little bit better. Again, not to throw one of my guys under the bus, shout out Russ Westbrook. I love him to death. But Russell Westbrook's numbers look flashier than Steph Curry's in a lot of ways. I'd still rather have Steph because you know what Steph is going to give you. He's going to give you winning. And I think it's a similar case with Dwayne Wade here. I would much rather have Dwayne Wade. I think the championships matter in terms of legacy and in terms of career. As much as AI did a lot for just being a fantastic scoring guard at a small size, and I commend him. I'm not disrespecting him by any means. He's still in my top 5. I just have Wade higher in that top 5.
So Dan, do you want to jump in on this topic?
Yeah, that was a lot to unpack. JJ went in. I'm gonna be honest, like I haven't watched enough film on Iverson to properly compare them. I do know that Iverson obviously changed the game. A lot of people look up to him, say he has like some of the best handles in the game. Obviously, Dwayne Wade won those championships with LeBron. He won one by himself before that. Great player. People usually rank him number 2 on the shooting guard list. After Michael, or number three, Kobe. a little hiccup there. But yeah, it seems like Iverson was more influential on players, but basketball wise, probably Dwayne Wade has the edge.
Dad, come on, you gotta agree with me. All right, so sorry, JJ, go ahead.
Not to disrupt you right there, but in any case, this is a close discussion. I'm not going to pretend like it's not. I pitched this on Instagram to my followers, and I think the final percentage was about like 56% for Dwayne Wade to give him the nod. So obviously, it is a close discussion. It's not like we're saying one guy's great, the other guy's trash. It's just I think we clearly disagree on who has the slight edge over the other one.
Right, but JJ, I'm gonna discuss this argument with you because you said with Iverson you had to surround him with good players, but can't you say that for everyone in this league? You can't surround LeBron James with all 3-point shooters. You can't do that with Steph Curry. You're seeing that with Steph Curry right now. He's still got decent players around him. I'm not saying Wiggins or Oubre and Draymond Green are great players, but they're still decent pieces. Let's not act like they're not good pieces. And where are the Warriors right now? As good as Steph Curry is. And look at what Iverson did. I know you're gonna throw this argument out, but it wasn't that the same thing with Dwight Howard back in the day? With a lot of players, you have to surround them with players that complement their game. And I never get that rings argument because we could always throw out Robert Ory is better than everyone because he's got what 6-7 championships.
But it's not
Bill Russell's got the most.
But it's not just the rings argument. It's just one guy more clearly translates to a winning culture than the other guy, and one guy has done it in the playoffs consistently. And yeah, AI had his, magical run that everybody loves to hype up, but I implore you to go back. You know this. I know you know this, but for a lot of people, I implore them to go back and look at those teams. That Sixers team was perfectly constructed for AI. It lacked the name notoriety. It lacked maybe the talent, but in terms of the players and in terms of fitting them around AI, that's exactly what he needed. He needed a great defensive team around him, which is what he had, to hide him on that end while giving him free reign on offense.
So JJ, I'm going to throw you on the spot here. Give me on that Iverson team that we're talking about that he took to the finals. Give me one name besides Mutombo. And I know you've mentioned it wasn't the name, but who else was on that team? Like there weren't that many pieces around him.
If I'm not mistaken, Mackey was on that team.
I don't remember Mackey. I know some other guys, but I don't remember Mackey.
At point guard? Am I tripping?
That's something we'd have to Google, but I don't remember Mackey. I don't remember hearing his name. I don't remember him at all, actually. So, but the argument here is he won one game against arguably one of the most dominant teams in the history. I mean, Shaquille O'Neal was putting up 30 points, 12, 13 rebounds. Kobe was going off those entire playoffs and those years just so long. He's been going off his entire career, but you know what I'm trying to say here. But he was carrying the Philadelphia's offense by himself. And I know that rings argument comes in, and you can say that Iverson didn't contribute to winning, but you look at Dwayne Wade. Who did he have besides him? Chris Bosh. We can't ignore the fact that he's got one of the best players in not Shaquille O'Neal, excuse me, LeBron James. And he also had a decent player in Shaquille O'Neal. I know Shaquille wasn't the same player as he was before, but he still had a decent Shaq in that 2006 finals against the Mavericks. So obviously Dwayne Wade was amazing. It's not to discredit Dwayne or Iverson, but to mention that he doesn't contribute to winning culture when he has not had the same talent surround him as Dwayne Wade
The
did.
same level as Dwayne Wade. Let me clear that up in case I made that in case I made that unclear.
Sorry, what was that?
Oh, I'm sorry. You said to say he doesn't contribute to a winning culture. Let me clear that up. To the same level that a Dwayne Wade does.
No, I disagree. As I mentioned, Dwayne Wade had prime LeBron James. I mean, he was unreal. And let's not forget about Chris Bosh, Ray Allen. They had some really nice pieces on that Miami Heat team as well. So,
But that's would still discredit so many. Are you going to discredit Kobe's 3 rings with Shaq because he had Shaq? No, he played a tremendous role in that championship, as did Dwayne Wade. He was the co-star to LeBron. He was the number 2. And obviously with that first championship that he had with Shaquille O'Neal, that final series was completely dominated by Dwayne Wade, and a young Dwayne Wade at that. He was phenomenal at such a young age against a really good Dirk Nowitzki-led Mavericks team.
yeah, no doubt he was. But I mean, you're mentioning that Kobe did it with Shaq, but he also did it without Shaq as well. And I know you're going to mention that Dwayne Wade did it without LeBron as well. But I don't know. I still disagree. I think Iverson changed the way players play the game, the way they dressed, that arm sleeve he used to rock. I think there's so many arguments to be made here, but I do. I'm gonna rest my case here by saying prime Iverson over prime D Wade. No.
Okay. See, if we're talking about strictly primes, maybe I'd be a little more inclined to agree with you. But if we're talking about the whole of the career and the legacy that they left behind from their entire playing career, no way I could ever have Allen Iverson above Dwayne Wade.
Well, this is an argument that can go on for hours, but we want you guys to let us know in that comment section down below, prime D Wade or prime Iverson. Let us know who you would take.
And obviously on the whole of the actual career itself. You know what? Just tell us who you like better. They're both phenomenal players. Tell us who you think is a better player. And in general, we hope you've enjoyed today's official kickoff episode for the Raptors Roundtable. This is something that we kind of had in the works for a while, and we were super excited to get going. So hopefully you folks sharing our excitement here. It has been such a pleasure doing this. Like I said earlier in the video, subscribe to all of our channels. These videos are going to be rotating from all around. I believe the next one should be on Clutch Takes channel. So if you really enjoyed the content here today, you know what to do to keep up.
See you guys next time.
See ya.